They built cities, monumental, that emerged among the trees of Central America, cultivated a bellicose culture that exalted war as a sacred activity, and worshipped dark gods that required bloodshed through human sacrifices. Surrounded by and intriguing stories, civilization. Mayan was the greatest and most powerful pre-Columbian civilization, having appeared around 2600 before Christ and reached the height of their development between centuries 8 and 9. They occupied the area that today comprises of Mexico. This area included the entire Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala and Belize, as well as the western portions of Honduras and the Salvador. It was thanks to of agriculture that the first Meso inhabitants, America, settled in societies. Sedentary farmers having as main source of food corn cultivation, beans and pumpkins, in between to others, crops that adopted the agricultural lifestyle, like the Olmecs, Mixtecs and Aztecs. The Mayans stood out for their speed. Territorial expansion, the history of civilization. Mayan is divided into three main periods. The pre-classic period, classic and post-classic. During the pre-classic period, that took place between the years 2000 before Christ and 250 after Christ, small villages began to grow and form cities. A political system was also built in a form, theos, i.e., the belief that the king and other members of adopted, divine, and therefore full authority over subjects. The divine authority vested in the ruler was such that the king exercised final control over administrative functions, economic, police, and military, with your authority being reinforced by public exhibitions, rituals, and religion. The devotion of the population to their ruler allowed the mobilization of hundreds of people in the execution of huge infrastructure projects and construction of solid and richly detailed. As the population has increased over time, various sectors of society have become increasingly specialized, and the political organization has become increasingly complex. Hundreds of cities were connected in a web of political hierarchies. The rich segment of society has multiplied, a middle class developing among artisans, priests, merchants, and soldiers. The Mayan calendar system had its origins in the pre-classic period, being developed to its maximum sophistication, recording lunar cycles, solar eclipses, and movement of planets with great precision. The Mayan calendar was intrinsically linked to religious rituals and astronomy. The Mayans made observations of the celestial bodies, recording the movement of the sun, of the moon, and stars. Although astronomy was used mainly by the priesthood to understand the time cycles and project them into the future to produce prophecies, also had some practical applications. How to provide help with planting and harvesting crops. During the classic period, that lasted between the 250 years and 900 after Christ, the Mayans reached the height of construction, large-scale and urbanism, and achieved intellectual and artistic development. Significant? The political organization of the classical period has been compared to classical Greece, with several cities, autonomous states and circles, and a complex network of beliefs and enmities. Most cities had a population between 50,100 and 20,000 people. Some of these powerful cities fought violent wars among themselves, as happened with the legendary rivalry between Tikal cities. Yecalakmul, both cities developed extensive systems of allies and vassals. The smaller towns that entered one of these networks gained prestige for their association with the capital city. This political context can be compared to Japan from the Sengoku Jidai era, founded in the 3rd century. In the current territory of Guatemala, Tikal was the greatest city in the Mayan Empire and the capital of a state of conquest, which became one of the most powerful kingdoms of the ancient Mayans. The Tikal had its sovereignty challenged by the equally great city of Tutilracan around the year 370 after Christ, decisively subjugated the rulers of Tikal, installing thus a new dynasty. There were also other places with architecture and sculpture particularly notable, like the city of Chichen Itza, not Yucatan State. Chichen Itza was one of the greatest Mayan cities and may have had one of the most diverse populations in the Mayan world, a factor that contributed to the variety of styles, architecture on site. It was during the classical period that the Mayans made advances in the study of mathematics and made official a writing system based on the use of hieroglyphs. The Mayan writing system is one of the greatest achievements of the inhabitants. America's preconceptions, considered the most sophisticated and developed regarding a dozen writing systems that developed in Mesoamerica. War prevailed in the Mayan world. Military campaigns were introduced for a variety of reasons, including control of trade and rail routes, attacks to take captives, and even complete destruction of an enemy state. The kings Mayans had a duty to lead as captains of war, but in case they were defeated, could be captured, tortured, and sacrificed. The Mayan states did not maintain standing armies, but every man, adult, was fit for military service. Warriors were highly disciplined and participated in regular training exercises, which included combats, war strategies, and dances. Some native chronicles suggest that women occasionally also fought in battles. The Mayan religion was based on the belief in a supernatural realm inhabited by a series of powerful deities that mostly develops a cruel and violent character and constantly needed to be appeased with offerings, ritual manuals, and practices. For the Mayans, the gods were the personified forces of nature, being able to command the rain, the wind, fire, and other elements. As always, in these supernatural forces permeated the lives of the Mayans and influenced all its aspects, from the simplest activities of the day to day-like food preparation, trade, policy, and elite activities. The Mayan deities ruled all aspects of the world, both visible and invisible. The worship of ancestors was also practiced, deceased, who would intercede for their living descendants. In relations with the supernatural kingdom, families buried their dead under the ground, with offerings appropriate to the social status of the family. As Mayan society developed and the elites became more powerful, discover your own domestic sanctuaries in the Great Pyramids, who began to fight the tombs of their ancestors. The most important Mayan rituals culminated in human sacrifice. Blood was seen as a potent source of nutrition for the deities, and the sacrifice of a living creature. It was a powerful blood offering. Generally, only high-status prisoners of war were sacrificed, with lower-status captives being used for work. The sacrifice of an enemy king was the most valued, and such a sacrifice involved the beheading of the ruler. Captive, but sometimes this only happened after the victim was tortured, being beaten, burned, or disemboweled in various ways. The extraction of the heart. With the victim still alive, it was also common practice. That was one influence of the Aztecs of the Valley of Mexico. The Mayans expressed their beliefs, religions, and other aspects of society through art, showing color preference green or blue-green. They placed great value on jade stones and even sculpted a large variety of sculptures and masks, funeral homes that weighed up to 4 kilos. The Mayans had a long tradition of painting on murals. The walls were lined with plaster and drawings. Polychrome were painted in a smooth finish. Most of these murals did not survive, but painted tombs were excavated in Tikal and other locations. Among the best preserved murals is the series, in real size, of paintings from an archaeological site in Bonampak. The period classic post lasted 950 to 1539 after Christ and was characterized by the abandonment of the main classic period cities. Among scholars, does not exist consensus that explains the collapse of Mayan society, but it probably had a combination of causes, including wars, over and severe environmental degradation, which in turn brought drought of the main water sources that supply cities. Mass migrations changed the scene of the Mayan world considerably, with entire cities being left empty and rarely being repopulated. Most of the population headed from the highest lands, building new smaller towns on top of the hills, where the geography of the land has allowed for greater protection against attacks. Enemies. The Mayan world has had a new impact. With the arrival of the Spaniards in 1511, that was when a Spanish caravel wrecked in the Caribbean, and about a dozen survivors landed on the coast of Yucatan. They were captured by a Lord Maya, and most were sacrificed. Of 1517 to 1519, 3 Spanish expeditions explored the Yucatan coast and fought several battles with the Mayan inhabitants. Even the brave Mayan warriors could not rival the military superiority of the Spaniards that were equipped with firearms, cannons, and armor and swords made of steel. One by one, major cities. Mayans were captured and sacked by the Spanish, who were always thirsty for precious metals, mainly gold, to enrich your safes. Impedum was the last independent Mayan city, falling into the hands of the Spaniards in the year 1697. Despite the Spanish conquests have weakened the Mayan culture, it was not extinct. The tribes and the Mayan language proved to be resistant to time. The ritual calendar of 260 days remains in use in modern Mayan communities. In the highlands of Guatemala and Chiapas, where millions of Mayan speakers inhabit, the territory in which their ancestors developed, your civilization.
Subscribe to the Vault of Chronicles channel. Stories you've never heard, every day here.